If you were to have a service that you provided to someone, but you knew that someone needed to qualify, they needed to be the right fit for you. If you're building a swimming pool, but you're building it in rock, and you have to dig through a lot of rock and they don't have the rock digging equipment, you would want to know that first. You would want to know what you're digging in. And that becomes one of the qualifications of whether or not they qualify for you. Does that ground qualify for you to be the one digging? Otherwise, you might need to bring in other equipment or other people to do that part of the work. So think of it under that context, and that will really help you know and quickly get around to that idea. Hey everybody, Jeff here. Before we get started, if you're getting value from the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you listening on podcast apps, don't forget to rate and review. Your support really helps the show reach more people, and for that, I am truly grateful. Now let's dive in.
Welcome to The Point with Jeff Spikes, the show about achieving goals, embracing growth, and finding your true path. And now, here's your host, Jeff Spikes.
Hello and welcome to The Point. This is your host, Jeff Spikes. What a pleasure it is to be here, having this conversation with you, opening your mind to new possibilities and new ideas, and really leveraging and working towards what your gifting is and what your strength is and how you become the most epic version of yourself. Not only how you can be the most epic version of yourself, but how that can keep you from experiencing results that you don't want and help you move easily and effortlessly into what the goals are that you have for your life and what the visions are that you have to how you're wanting to live and what you're wanting to feel, what you're wanting to see around you, and what you're wanting to experience. There is no goal that is too small. Having a vision is a great thing. One of those things to consider about that is, what is your relationship to vision? And what is too big of a vision or a goal to set? Are you someone who works within a 5-year or 10-year plan of what you're setting? Or are you a be in the moment and just allow things to happen type of person? Or are you on the other extreme of where you're setting a plan forward that is 100, 200 or more years in advance of looking at what the impact of your life may be? Maybe you're creating a foundation or an enterprise that you want to long outlive your physical existence on Earth. Maybe you're someone who is set to understand that your children and yourself even are going to live much longer than we have in our recent past of what we understand to be possible based on new science and new achievements being made in personal optimization, both physically and mentally. Consider where you are in that realm of what you consider to be a vision. Why? One of the reasons that you would want to understand where you fit into that is that could change the questions you ask yourself, or that could change the questions you ask others as far as what makes you effective in wanting to reach out to others. So I have a host of questions that I teach people, and a host of questions that I ask that I ask when I'm working with someone else to discover how it is that if whether or not a client qualifies to work with me, or if there's a relationship that would work between us. It's a set of discovery questions, and before I move forward into those discovery questions, I will always ask for permission. So I'm going to share this process that I go through with people, because one of the things that you can do is you can take this, adapt it to be your questions for how you connect with others and how you discover what type of relationship you have to that individual or an organization or a group of people that you might work with, even if it's on a volunteer basis or just people you might want to relate with or be in community with. And this can help you understand how you fit and help you gain a lot of insight. So I specifically use it when deciding if someone fits the mold of what I'm looking for, of who I support and who I work with. And I work best with visionaries, either helping people gain a vision. So if you are looking to gain vision and understanding and move forward towards a larger vision, or if you have a large vision, and there is no limit on how large that can be. So the first thing to do is to ask for permission. Ask if you can discover whether or not someone's open to being asked questions. And I always like to put it into a framework of asking that, hey, so that I can gain more understanding, or so that I can so I can gain context for what we're talking about. So if there's a reason that I'm meeting with somebody, it's usually to discover if we want to work together, even if it's in an interview type of a situation where I'm either interviewing or someone else is interviewing me. We will go into these are the types of things I do, and I first ask permission I gain permission to ask questions that are basically so we can gain context for the conversation. So first, get permission to be curious, and ask someone if they're willing to be open. That's another way of going about that. Is are you in a position where you can be open and talk about this with me at this time? In business, there's often times where people are not in a position where they're able to be open, and sometimes that is about timing, and being considerate and understanding of that is very important. Otherwise, you could end up taking things very personally, and oftentimes there's just reasons and timing of things not to share. So gain context for the conversation and understand why you're there, and get permission to have the conversation and to be curious and ask questions. Once you have that, the first question that I like to ask is, what is the largest goal you have? What is it you're trying to achieve? What is it you want? So notice I asked 3 questions all at once. It's important you ask one question and pause. In professional coaching, if you learn about professional coaching, where there's a lot of query and inquisition that happens, you'll learn that it's a key element to not stack a bunch of questions. It's actually called question stacking. So I was giving you 3 options of ways to ask that. There's many more, but it's important not to stack questions. So what is the largest goal you have? And it's important to know how big of a vision someone has, so that a good follow-up question is, how large of a vision would you like to have? Like, is that the largest vision you've considered? Or you can ask more discovery questions around that. That way you understand what it is they're trying to develop just around what the largest vision is. If you're working with a company, and more of the context of what you're asking is more about helping, and you already know that you're there to help someone make a change. So if you're meeting with someone personally, you're meeting someone through a community organization or a church, and you know that you're there to help them with something more specific, even if it's problem oriented or if it's more move away type cause, you can ask, what is the biggest challenge or opportunity you face? What is the biggest problem you're facing? What is the biggest challenge you have right now? Again, we're talking about the context and the framework. So understand why you're there, gain the permission to have context, and then ask, what is the largest X that you are focused on? The next is to learn what the pains are about that if it continues to be a problem. So if that continues to be a problem, if you do nothing to influence or impact that problem, or if you do nothing to improve that vision or to reach towards that vision or that goal, if nothing changes, what are the consequences? And what are the consequences to you and anyone else that's involved? What are the consequences to you in a business environment? It would be the consequences to you, the company, the team, maybe a specific team, maybe a business unit. What are the consequences across the board? What are the consequences to the client? What are the consequences to the suppliers? All of these questions, learn and dig deep into what are those consequences. Now, these series of questions, it's okay to pause and take time and ask many questions within it. You're just trying to get clarity on what is the pain that's being faced should nothing change. That will automatically open up all the problems and all the pains that have been coming so far. So the next step that you do is to start gaining a picture of what winning looks like. If the problem were to be solved, or if the vision were to be gained, what would that look like immediately? If you just had an answer as far as what this looks like, what would it look like? So that's basically asking, what does success look like? What does winning look like to you? And then stop, listen, and open it up. In this question, it's been found, for what I've noticed is that it's best to ask this question in a way where it's very open, and then stop. Don't Don't ask this question in a way that would lead them into an answer. Open a big, open ended, wide question and see where they land, and allow clarity questions to drive it further. Really allow the time and the space for them to consider what winning looks like to them. If anything, you can push towards a clearer, bigger representation of it. All of these things you're gaining understanding as far as who you're working with as well. And it's important to watch body language. Imagine you're sitting in front of someone right now and you've gone through these questions. You know why you're there and you have the idea already. You have the person sitting across from you pictured in your mind, and you know why you're sitting in front of them. And you've understood what it is that you're there for. And you've shared that. And they've shared with you what the pains and the consequences would be if nothing changes, which includes what they're feeling up to now, what the consequences are, what the pains are up to now. And imagine then watching their face, watching, and if they're in deep thought mode, or are they more looking up and surprised? And when you ask the question of what does winning look like to you, notice how they respond in their entire self, not just in their words. Do they go into deep thought? Do they take a breath and just sit back and, oh, man, close their eyes? Look and pay attention and listen to the body language, and it will help you also learn what the emotion is around it and what they're really facing on an interpersonal level, and also the importance. Now, in this mode, one of the ways to dig rather than staying completely curious and digging into an end of what winning looks like, you could, when they come up with an idea that feels right, that feels like that's the win that you'd be helping them with, you can ask more questions of, by noticing their body language, you can make statements like, man, that seems really important to you. How would you gauge that? That level of importance. Am I right? That type of thing. So you can actually ask some really good, more clarifying questions on how important it is. How do they value that? What is really dig into that idea. So otherwise, it might be important to either chunk them up into a bigger vision and to help really understand if there's not some type of congruence between the beginning thought of what you're looking to accomplish and this answer of what winning looks like. Allow that difference to be there and just notice it and ask questions about it. Like, I noticed that in what we're here for is talking about this huge vision, yet winning looks to you like something that's more, and that vision was 10, 15, 20, 30 years vision, and your answer to what winning looks like right now is more of a next month what you're looking to feel and achieve, or next week. And help me understand the difference between those two. Is it the same? Is it different? Like, you can play around with that a little bit, because what you're looking for is continuity. You're looking for consistency. You're going to be of service. You want to understand where those gaps are, because maybe being of service is just to help gain that clarity, and then that's a different thing than it could be. So once you're there and you've sunk into that place and you're really receptive and listening, you want to then ask questions, and you feel clear on that. You can ask questions of, how are they measuring this? So how would you measure that success, that win? What are the metrics that you're using that would help you understand that you're succeeding? If it's more of you can also instead ask more feeling questions there instead of physical metrics. Like, what's that going to feel like when you've achieved that? What's it going to, and I really ask specific questions. If it's a personal gain, you can ask more questions of, once you achieve that, what do you imagine? Like 2, 3, 4, 6 months, even after that's been achieved and you're settled into the change and that's been done, what's going to be different in your life? Right? How will you know you won? How will you really acknowledge and recognize? So if there aren't metrics, that can be another way to dig into that. And then that can also be a way of you helping find the metrics of how they might measure that. But it's really important that you connect a measurement, because otherwise, how do we know where we're going? So in the world of using your best self to move towards something, you can feel good being taken along a journey of having someone help you work within your strengths, like many companies do, to feel more effective and more engaged at work and have a happier work life. Or you can really take it personally to into your way of being, of moving forward towards things and feel more accomplished as well, and actually get known for the types of gains that you deliver and make in organizations and places, and then be recognized for those things. So when you're same type of thing, when you're in this setting, looking for those individual ways and metrics to help people find the measurements, because if you can't measure it, it's very difficult then to be able to say, well, this is what I do. This is the experience I have. These are the wins that people get around me. Gain the clarity and the understanding of what success looks like and what the metrics are, why those metrics work, and that'll really help you then measure the wins. Next is to really then understand what that's worth. What type of gain are they making, and what is that worth to them? What value would they place on that? And some change is like, man, it's worth anything. I'd give everything for that, right? I was talking the other day. Someone said I'd give anything to have more time with this family member that they couldn't spend any more time with. I'd give any. Well, that's a big thing, right? Well, in business, you can quantify it, and it can be more of a monetary, or it can be it does, but it all doesn't have. This isn't all about monetary gain. This is about helping understand how they value what it is that they're trying to achieve. So, should you help them, and whether you help them or not, help them then understand what they might want to invest, both emotionally, physically, their time. How much time they want to put towards it, how much of their resources that they want to use. So, and what they're willing to do externally. If you're able to be helpful, how do you then put some type of a value on how you might be helpful? And that's important, because it's important for you, especially moving forward in your greatest self and your greatest sense of self and within your strengths. It's important to gain value for that and to understand value for that, so that you can also quantify your own wins and understand what it's worth to you to help people make these changes, or to uh, achieve what it is they're trying to achieve. So make sure that you stop for a minute and really discover and consider what that is worth to the person that you're speaking to, or the organization. Right? Again, but if you're working with an organization and you're talking about multi-million-dollar gains, there's a challenge, and you want to increase, you want to 10 times, 20 times the result they're having, and that equates to X amount of millions of dollars of profits, or of whether gross or net. And what does that mean? That's it's all very relative in that landscape. Um, Next, of what it's worth, what are you willing to then invest? What are you then willing to expend? So you want to take it to that next level, where you're not just asking what it's worth, but then, just because something's worth a certain thing doesn't mean they're willing to invest it based on all the other priorities. And then that's the opportunity to discuss, to circle back up and say, is this really the most important change? Is this really the largest vision? Is this really the most important challenge or opportunity to invest in? Or what are all of the other priorities that are keeping you from making this investment? So this is where you can connect somebody's desire for something to their willingness to make the change, and help close that gap. You're wonderfully, beautifully being of service to someone if you help them realize that the reason that they're not gaining what they're wanting to gain, they're not making the wins they want to, is because, for whatever reason, they're not in a time frame to invest in it, in what's needed to make it move, to make the change, or to to move the needle, so to speak. They're not willing to push the gas that far. And why? Right? That's not and keep that from being anything judgmental, and discover, great, understand there's probably a good reason. It's easy to walk into someone else's life and say, well, that's stupid, or that makes no sense at all. But if you feel yourself going there in any of this process, take a minute, pause, take a deep breath, and don't move forward in that energy. And instead understand that they have a perfectly good reason for why they're doing or not doing something, and help learn and understand that. Gain an understanding first. This is all a discovery session. This is all a discovery mission. And if you start driving towards an agenda to do anything other than discover whether or not you're meant to be of service, then it can really skew your results, because you can, through the conversation, lean someone into something that neither of you want. So be clear about your intention and be clear about what you're doing. This can be a sales process you walk someone through. And if you're clear that what you have to offer is something they need, you can utilize this as an actual sales flow and walk someone through to understanding that what they need is you to use the service you have, or for you to deploy for them to buy the service or the thing that you have that will then give them everything they want. And that's fantastic, especially if that's true. But be clear at this point that you're on the same page and that you're wanting to move forward. It can really be awesome to do that. So the next question would be to understand what their actual criteria is for what they're looking for help. Is this even something they want your help with or outside help with? In these discovery sessions, it's not uncommon to find that there's a service that they could buy or a thing they could do that would solve the problem, especially when it's a smaller problem. One of the reasons I love talking to visionaries and working with someone with a vision or someone that wants a vision the most is that they're difficult to attain, and that's a gift of mine. So I will work within that framework really well. I'm sharing these questions with you so that you can adapt them to yourself, not try and be who I am, but be who you are within these questions. So it's important at this phase when you're doing this to start looking at what their criteria is. What is it that they're looking for? And maybe they discover that, well, my criteria is that I learned to do this for myself. Well, now maybe you can show up and help teach them how to do that for themselves. Or maybe you can, maybe there's a course or something else that they can lean into. But at this time, this will really help you qualify right now whether or not it's going to be a fit. You may sit there in my work. I will then at that point say, what criteria do you have if you're going to hire outside help to get this done? Or if depending on if it's a position that's going to be filled and I'm filling a position for somebody, it's what's the criteria you have for that position? And we're going to create what that looks like and then put that to use. So, or even if it's a service or the utilization of some type of customizable service, what's your criteria for what are you trying to do? It's another way of asking, what do you want, in a different way? But now you're down in the solution phase of saying, okay, now I can either help you with that or not. Those are the baseline of questions. I'm going to double check my notes and make sure I didn't miss anything in this, because depending on how the conversation goes, it can have a lot of difference. When you talk about what it's worth, if you're talking to an owner of a company or a business, it is important to ask, what's it not only worth to you, but what's it worth to your clients? What's it worth to your customers, your suppliers, your whoever it is that you serve, your teams, the company, the brand. You can ask it in many ways so that you can really uncover what that worth is, and that's very similar to what you're already asking earlier on. And so when you're already asking that question, when you're looking at what the consequences are if that doesn't get resolved, or what the consequences are, what the pains are up to now, as to the brand, to the client, to the family, to the whatever it is. By this point, you've reached a place to make a decision, and you can either then make a deal right there and understand, but you'll have clarity and understanding as to what your part is in helping them move forward and whether or not there's a fit at all. I I tend to look at people. Imagine if you're, just think about this. This is where the role that we're in. If you were to have a service that you provided to someone, but you knew that someone needed to qualify, they needed to be the right fit for you. If you're building a swimming pool, this is maybe this is an analogy or metaphor that you can work with. But if you're building a swimming pool, but you're building it in rock, and you have to dig through a lot of rock, and they don't have the rock digging equipment, they really only have the equipment to dig in the dirt. You would want to know that first, or if you would want to know what you're digging in. And that becomes one of the qualifications of whether or not they qualify for you. You know, does that ground qualify for you to be the one digging? Otherwise, you might need to bring in other equipment or other people to do that part of the work. So think of it under that context, and that will really help you know and quickly get around to that idea. So quick review on this. Get the context of the conversation and why you're there and what you're really working on. Gain that context, gain the clarity, gain the understanding. Hopefully you have that before you even meet, and then gain the permission to ask the questions and have the conversation and to be curious. Then find out what it is you're really aiming towards and gain some clarity. Get a clear picture of what the pains are if that never changes. You really get a hold on what success looks like to that individual that you're going to be serving. Wrap some value around that. We really gain an understanding of how that will move them forward and how everyone benefits, and what they're willing to put into it. You know, maybe the price of admission is more of an effort level. If you're helping somebody through something where they need to put in effort, and a lot of volunteers go to help people. And if you're someone that's reaching out to help someone work through some type of a challenge or an opportunity and grow past an obstacle, and if they're not willing to put in the effort and you can't gain commitment from them that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get the result that you can help them achieve, that may be your qualifier for them. That may be the qualifier as to whether or not you choose to move forward and be of service to that person. They may have some type of other value system that doesn't match yours, and that would be a good time to help them find someone else and walk away, or reframe it somehow in a way that you can be useful. Maybe there's only a piece of it that you can do, and then they get to decide whether or not that's interesting to them. But more times than not, when you walk into new business relationships or new helpful relationships where you're being of service to others, on any level, you will have a much more successful time moving forward, and you'll have more of an opportunity to be the greatest version of you, because you'll understand what the expectations are and actually how to win. You're creating a roadmap of how to win and how to help somebody win. We can go more into, based on your strengths and based on how you do things moving forward, then how to move into a relationship like that when you find a win, and how to pay attention to and track and notice all the things moving forward, so that you're really keeping the measurements needed to clearly understand how things are moving forward, and make sure that people understand and are all on the same page with what's happening. Because another really common thing that can happen if you're helping people through change is that they can naturally want to retrace back towards an old behavior or an old way of doing things, because it's so natural to do. They've automated a lot of the behaviors or the tactics around it. So you have to be prepared for that, so that you can immediately redirect. And oftentimes you can get ahead of that as well. So using the greatest part of you, working and integrating and understanding the greatest part of others, the greatest resources within you as a person and within others, and aligning those things towards a goal can be one of the most powerful things you've ever done. And it can also be one of the easiest, simplest things you've ever done. You'll be absolutely amazed in hindsight at how simple a move forward was when you do it naturally within your gifting. Clear the path to your greatest self and move forward. And if you want help with that, if that's something that you're excited about, dive into this process of designing strengths, dive into the other resources for gaining awareness of what your strengths are, and get into the fine tuning of you, because you're worth that level of attention. That's it. That's the point with Jeff Spikes. Peace out. Have a beautiful day, and love to all.
Jeff Spikes, the show about achieving goals.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. Please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.